One of the highlights of Bill O'Reilly's Super Bowl Sunday interview of Donald Trump was his attempt, a valiant effort by Bill O'Reilly, to get Trump to say one critical word about Vladimir Putin, the authoritarian president of Russia. And as you're going to see in this clip, it didn't work.
Do you respect Putin?
I do respect him.
Do you?
But
Why?
Well, I respect a lot of people, but that doesn't mean I'm going to get along with him. He's a leader of his country. I say it's better to get along with Russia than not. And if Russia helps us in the fight against ISIS, which is a major fight, and Islamic terrorism all over the world,
right,
major fight, that's a good thing. Will I get along with him? I have no idea. It's very
He's a
possible
killer,
I
though.
won't.
Putin's a killer.
A lot of killers. We got a lot of killers. Why, you think our country's so innocent? You think our country's so innocent?
I don't know of any government leaders that are killers in America.
Well, take a look at what we've done, too. We've made a lot of mistakes. I've been against the war in Iraq from the beginning.
Yeah, mistakes are different than...
A lot of mistakes, okay, but a lot of people were killed. So a lot of killers around, believe me.
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, Trump himself just made a gigantic mistake that killed an 8-year-old kid in Yemen.
Well, maybe he's including himself
Is that
in
what he's referring to?
Yeah, look, it's bizarre, and there's a lot to try to dissect there. It seems very forced and psychologically odd. It looks like a guy who's desperately trying not to insult someone who might have some secret information about him. That's what it seems like to me.
I feel uncomfortable with the master that's behind us right now. The master graphic.
Yeah, when we planned it, I didn't know that that's what it was going to look like.
Right, but it's okay.
There was a point, it had something to do with a lyric about being innocent. I think it's lost in translation.
Yeah.
But you saw the tape there, and look, this is not the only time that this has happened. Let's go back to the end of 2015. This is a constant narrative from Donald Trump when asked to criticize Vladimir Putin.
Like Vladimir Putin's comments about you?
Sure. When people call you brilliant, it's always good, especially when the person heads up Russia.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, also as a person that kills journalists, political opponents, and invades countries. And invades countries. Obviously, that it would be a concern, would it not?
He's running this country, and at least he's a leader, you know, unlike what we have in this country.
No, but again, he kills journalists that don't agree with him.
Well, I think our country does plenty of killing also, Joe. So, you know. There's a lot of stupidity going on in the world right now, Joe. A lot of killing going on, a lot of stupidity, and that's the way it is. But you didn't ask me the question. You asked me a different question, so that's fine.
What? I don't know that last part.
Yes, there is a lot of killing and a lot of stupidity.
So his response to Joe Scarborough mentioning that Vladimir Putin kills journalists who oppose him was, well, at least he's a leader. Mm-hmm. So you kind of see, you know, what Donald Trump's mindset is, and it's scary. And look, one of the stories that broke after his inauguration was that several journalists who were just merely covering the protests on Inauguration Day were arrested, and they were charged with rioting, even though there was no evidence indicating that they were rioting. The police report was the exact same for every single journalist that was arrested, right? The exact same wording, no specifics on what kind of rioting they were engaged in. They're reporters, they're gonna be at the protest. If there are rioters there, you don't arrest the journalists who are covering them. That's their job, that's what they're supposed to do. Weird, I thought the right wing really valued free speech and the First Amendment, but apparently they don't, unless it has to do with a professional troll going to college campuses to provoke a response. But nonetheless, I think that reaction is scary, and it's foreshadowing, and we'll see, you know, what kind of action Trump will continue to take against people who disagree with him, but he's already taken some action. Yeah,
and so I'm glad that you brought that up, because of course, I think it's probably the secondary problem I have with this, but if in reaction to someone saying, this is a guy who kills opposition leaders, poisons them, we're gonna get to the details in just a second, kills journalists, and your reaction is, yeah, but we live in a serious world, there's scary people out there, maybe things need to be done, you need to be a leader. Yes, there he's talking about Russia, but is it impossible to believe that at some point, if somebody disappeared in the US, well, you know, we live in a serious place, there's a lot of stupidity out there, let's not go crazy about it. That could potentially be the case. And look, he has some point. We have killed a lot of people in the U.S. under Barack Obama, under George W. Bush, and certainly going back farther. If you go back far enough, we've overthrown democratically elected governments. We've started coups. We've invaded countries. I don't think that recently we've invaded countries like Russia invaded Crimea simply to add to our territory, but we certainly have occupied a lot of places, killed a lot of people. But we don't kill opposition leaders inside of our country. George W. Bush didn't take out John Kerry when he started to get a little bit popular. Howard Dean was brought down by a scream, not by a bullet. That's how the U.S. operates.
Yes.
We don't kill journalists here. We lock up whistleblowers, but we don't kill journalists.
Yeah, we do. We do. Look, I just think it's a bizarre statement coming from Trump after he basically gave a raid a green light in Yemen, and it killed so many innocent civilians, right? And so is that a reflection on his own decision? And by the way, that was within the first 2 weeks of his presidency.
Yeah.
So if he managed to screw a raid up that badly within the first 2 weeks, in addition to all of his anti-Muslim rhetoric, I mean, what kind of damage is he going to do in Muslim countries moving forward with drone strikes or raids? And how is that going to make our country safer, right? So that's another thing to take into consideration. Is he being a leader by provoking hostility and anger toward the United States by killing? Just to give you numbers, by the way, in case you missed the Yemen report, 30 people were killed, including 10 women and children. Among the dead, an 8-year-old granddaughter of Nasser al-Awlaki, Nawar, also the daughter of Anwar al-Awlaki. If you guys remember that story from years ago, that was when the Obama administration essentially killed an individual that they suspected of being a terrorist without any due process whatsoever, American citizen, and then they proceeded to kill his 16-year-old American-born son in Yemen.
Yeah, now, look, coming out of the interview, you might expect that there should be follow-ups. Every interview that Donald Trump has for the near future should have a follow-up. Can you please admit that killing opposition leaders and journalists is a bad thing? But we're probably not going to get that. We might, however, get an apology from the other side of it, Fox News, because Russia's press secretary put out this statement. We think that such words from a correspondent of the Fox News network are unacceptable, offensive, and we would, honestly, prefer to receive apologies from such a respected TV company. As to the statement of the U.S. president, in this case, I would prefer to leave it without any comment. Because from their point of view, they already got what they want. They were defended. For propaganda purposes, he can now put that out, okay? Yeah. The U.S. is okay with our policies. You can't criticize us for how we treat opposition and media because the U.S. is okay with it. That's going to be useful to them in the future. But we've only sort of alluded to it. Let's go into some of the specifics. At least 34 journalists have been murdered in Russia since Putin took power back in 2000. These are from records on press rights violations collected by the Committee to Protect Journalists and the Moscow-based Glasnost Defense Foundation. Some of the alleged victims were found stabbed, shot, and poisoned, or as Vladimir Putin says, they died of natural causes. But also, it's not just journalists, it's politicians as well. Last week, I don't think that we got to this on the show, but last week, Putin critic Vladimir Kara-Murza, who nearly died of a suspected poisoning 2 years ago, had been hospitalized for organ failure. So 2 years ago, the day before he was going to lead an opposition rally against Vladimir Putin, this 35-year-old, I believe, he might have been 33, suddenly came down with normal 30-year-old health problems. Almost all of his organs failed, and he went into a coma that took a week to come back from, and he had to relearn how to walk. Then, a couple of years go by, and just a few days ago, he's doing a screening of a movie about the murder of Boris Nemtsov, which we'll turn to in just a second, and he suddenly has organ failure again.
Weird. What a coincidence.
And by the way, Boris Nemtsov was an up-and-coming, considered a threat opposition leader, a threat to Vladimir Putin, and he's walking outside of the government building, and he's shot dead. He's shot 4 or 5 times right outside of his government building.
Hey, but you know, at least Vladimir Putin's a leader.
That's true, and Vladimir Putin, to his credit, did order an investigation. And we still don't really know what happened, surprisingly.
You're at the end of this video, so the Young Turks is over. Wrong! The Young Turks is just beginning. Membership gives you the full 2-hour show, plus all of our member shows, old school, aggressive, progressive, TYT postgame every single day. Join and come and see how great membership is. TYTnetwork.com/join.